So today we're going to be talking about historical fiction, continuing our new unit, except we're going to be focusing on our new read aloud for this week titled Star of Fear, Star of Hope. So for today's reading, we're going to be focusing on this strategy called reading alertly. And to just review our objective for today, we are going to be learning how to read alertly and interpret as we read. And as we're doing that, some of the strategies that we're going to discuss today are looking to find the important parts, where to pause and read over and over again, find some of those details that support your ideas. And then when it's finally time to start answering some questions or having a discussion, or really just doing some thinking, you start thinking about how you can connect your ideas back to the details by using phrases like, in the text it says, for example, or this shows. So I'm sure you remember earlier this year when we were reading The Tiger Rising, there were certain parts of the book that really begged us to pause and pay close attention to. And it almost seemed like they had deeper meaning in these parts that kind of made us stop and pause and discuss. For example, I know right away I'm thinking about when we first met Sistine. Everyone wanted to stop and just pause and talk about her outfits, her actions, how sassy she was. Or later on in the story when we started to meet Rob and he had so many different kind of issues and we all wanted to stop and pause and think about his feelings. But do you guys remember when Willie Mae told Rob she thought his rash was really his sadness, wanting to come out instead of being kept inside of his body? That was such a deep, really, really important detail that the author didn't tell us to stop. We just all decided that we felt that sentence or that detail was extremely important. So we decided to stop or pause and really start thinking about what does that actually mean? So today what we're learning to do is I want to teach you that as readers, we don't need to wait for someone else to tell us where we need to stop or what parts of a text are worth pausing over. Readers read alertly and ready to say things like, wow, this part almost seems like it's written in bold, meaning it stands out to us. And then readers ask questions like, how does this connect to other parts of the text? What is this actually about? What is it really about? So again, as readers, you don't always have to wait for your teacher or anybody or the author to tell you, hey, by the way, when you get to page 6, I want you to pause. Tell me why that's important. It's up to you to decide, because all parts of a text are important, but it's up to you to be alert readers, meaning paying attention and thinking about, why is this standing out to me? And again, as we're continuing today, I'm going to give you guys some clues to help you do that. So we're going to take a look at Star of Fear, Star of Hope. I hope you guys watched the read aloud video or read the text. I really suggest you guys read it a few times before doing any kind of questions today, or if you read it and then do a couple of questions and then go back and reread and then answer some more. It's really important to go back and reread, as you'll see later on in this lesson. So we're going to revisit the read aloud Star of Fear, Star of Hope, and I'm just going to reread a small section. And if I reach a part that seems like it's written in bold or standing out to me, I'm going to stop and ask myself some of these important questions, like, does this connect to earlier parts of the text? What is this really about? What does it really mean? And I included a chart here that you can also find in our Google Classroom that gives us clues that suggest whether a passage is worth thinking about or pondering. For example, if you guys might remember this one, if we're reading something and we notice a word or maybe an image, if there's pictures, that's repeated often, maybe that's something important. Maybe the author is trying to tell us something without exactly just saying it. Like, I'm right away thinking about in The Tiger Rising, there was a reason why they kept bringing up the way Sistine was dressing, and the author kept bringing up Rob's sad feelings. And then we later on found out as we kept reading, those were huge details that kind of help build the story. The next part of our chart here says, notice if something catches you by surprise and stands out. So again, everyone won't always have the same parts that they think stand out or sound surprising, but when you do come across a part that sounds surprising to you, you can think to yourself, why? Why is the author putting this in the story? Or why might the author just put this in the text at all? Or what is the author trying to tell me? And you can kind of start going back and rereading. And lastly, you can also notice if something changes with your character. And this always seems pretty fun to me. When you start noticing a change in your character, there's a reason the author's doing that. But again, the author's never going to tell you, hey, I want you to pause here because I think this is important. It's up to you to do that work. So if you ever come across a sentence or a part that you're like, wow, this stands out to me, that's because you're reading alertly, meaning you're paying attention. So it's important to stop, pause, and start asking yourself some of these questions. What is this really about? And then you start putting it into your own words, building a connection, using details, and connecting it to your idea. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just rereading the first section of Star of Fear, Star of Hope, and I'm going to see if anything stands out to me in bold, or as if it was in bold. My name is Helen, and I'm nearly an old woman now. When I'm gone, who will remember Lydia? That is why I want to tell you our story. Right away, I'm starting to think that those first two sentences already stand out to me, but I'm just going to continue reading, but I definitely will be revisiting those sentences. In 1942, the north of France was invaded by the German army. Wow, even that stands out to me, because I'm building a connection from last week's read aloud where we heard about the German army, but let me keep going. Neither the war nor the Germans could keep Lydia and me from going to school or playing together or getting into fights and making up the way friends do all over the world. One day, while we were playing nearby, Lydia's mother sewed a yellow star onto Lydia's jacket. I said, "What a pretty star." Lydia's mother answered, "Pretty or not, we have no choice. Every Jew must wear it. It's the new law." Lydia's mother finished sewing on the star. "The place for stars is in the sky," she said. "When people take them down from the sky and sew them onto our clothes, it only brings trouble." Wow. So like I said, there were so many details that really stood out to me, but I'm just going to stick with one. And what I'm going to look at is I'm just going to go back to that first couple of sentences. And I noticed that right away, the character Helen starts to introduce someone named Lydia. And as I kept reading, it seemed like they must have been good friends. She was describing how they used to play when they were younger and they went to school. And that seems like an important sentence and tells me a lot already about the character Helen. What are you guys thinking? So I'm thinking that Helen and Lydia must have been maybe best friends and experienced a lot together. But as I kept reading, what else stood out to me was the word star, because it kept repeating. Lydia's mother sewed a star, and Helen seemed to question it, and she called it a pretty star. And then Lydia's mom started describing why she was sewing a star onto Lydia's jacket. So I'm thinking about, why might that be repeating so much? And then I realized from my background knowledge, I remember when we read Rose Blanche, we started learning a little bit about the German army and what it meant for some people who were Jewish. So I'm thinking maybe Helen isn't Jewish and Lydia was, and maybe we're going to find out something that happened to her. So again, this is what I'm just thinking about the clues that the author has been giving me. But if I wasn't reading so alertly, meaning going back and rereading and paying attention, I would probably miss all of this information. So if you notice, as I'm doing this and I'm going back and rereading and asking myself, what does this actually mean? I'm able to answer some questions that have to do with these text details. So, based on those first few paragraphs, how would you describe Helen? Do you think you can answer that already? And what do you know about Lydia, and how do you know this? So, right away, if I was to describe Helen, I would say that she seems like a really good friend of Lydia's because she's an older woman now. It seemed like she was best friends with Lydia when they were children, and she wants to share Lydia's story with the world. And if I was to talk about Lydia, even though this is just one section of the text, I would be able to describe Lydia probably as a very nice girl as well. It seems like she was Jewish because her mother was sewing a star onto her jacket. And it seemed like, maybe she was going to experience some trouble just on what we know about the German army during that time period. So again, it's really important to go back and focus on some of these clues that the author gives when we are reading alertly. So I just want to kind of talk about that again. It's really important to decide what parts of a text stand out to you. And to move forward with that, you pause and you start asking, why is this standing out to me? How does this connect with other parts of the story? What is it really about? And you'll realize as you go off today to answer some questions that depend on, evidence from the text, you'll see how much easier, how much more sense all the questions will make as you continue to pause and reread.